Everybody, how are we all doing today? Welcome to Glenn's Dynamic Sports Corner on 12OZSportsRadio.com. And I am your host, Glenn Kaplan. We are live in Baltimore, Maryland, which is home of the Baltimore Orioles and the Baltimore Ravens. Who's excited for today's show? I certainly am. I hope you all are as well. Since considering the fact that I guess some of you guys are still working from home, or if some states are in quarantine still or not, I'm just happy Maryland lifted its stay-at-home order, but you still gotta be cautious, obviously. I love you all. So, today's the 70th show on here, and I'm ready to get into business, and I hope you all enjoyed your wonderful weekend. I'm completely fired up for today's show. Let's get right into business. The Last Dance documentary and its lessons. So, last night, episodes 9 and 10. And to me, I thought by far, and it wasn't even close, that those two episodes were the best. And what I loved about episode 9 was the Indiana Pacers series in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was game 4. It was the first time they met. And the fact that Reggie Miller did not get called for a push-off was absolutely ridiculous. That was as clear and as blatant as day. That Reggie Miller pushed off on Michael Jordan. Are you kidding me? That would get called in today's NBA. That is a push-off. Usually 9 times out of 10. But that was probably the one time that it doesn't get called. Yes, the Bulls still won on the series and they still won the championship. Yes, okay. But they always like to talk about these things within a series. Was there a push-off? Should the Bulls worry? Do the Pacers have them in their heads? Yeah, that would have been talked about in today's media. That for sure would have definitely have happened. Definitely would have happened. Because I thought that Indiana team was not cocky. I thought they were confident enough to maybe knock off the Bulls. And Michael Jordan's like, this is the best team since the Detroit Pistons that we have faced in the Eastern Conference. Well, duh, it looked like it. Well, he would know considering he faced them. It was the Pistons. But the thing about the Pacers is, compared to the Pistons, Pacers were not dirty. No, you cannot say that about the Indiana Pacers. They were not dirty. They played physical, but you did not see any cheap. It seemed like you didn't see many cheap shots, but then yet again, Reggie Miller had no love lost for Michael Jordan. Because Reggie Miller is a great shooter. The thing about Reggie Miller is this. He's one of the best shooters of all time, probably, and then people saying, oh, it's Steph Curry, and I thought Reggie Miller. No, it's probably Steph Curry. But as for Reggie Miller and the Pacers, and I asked my dad this yesterday, did Indiana win a finals at all? He's like, no, only in the ABA. I'm like, wow. So you mean to tell me all these Pacers teams with Reggie Miller couldn't find a way to win an NBA title? Probably one of the better teams to never win a championship, along with what, the 06 Phoenix Suns, and some of those Orlando Magic teams in the 90s because of Michael Jordan. And the Houston Rockets won when Jordan basically retired. And then he came back to the league. And speaking of winning championships, Michael Jordan, after the 6th, felt like we could have got together one more year and won the 7th. But the Bulls decided to break it all up. It was Phil Jackson's last year no matter what. It seemed to be a mess between ownership and general manager and the players. Even throughout those championship years, it seemed like there was a discombobulation between the players, the coaches, and the ownership. And in some way, somehow, Jordan overcame that on the court. Another interesting thing about the last 2 episodes was Dennis Rodman. After Game 3, the WWE does not show up to practice. And I thought that was great. I thought it was funny how he just went to the WWE shtick after Game 3, doesn't show up to practice, and the media is trying to find him, and there's a media relations guys like, let's make sure he goes through these secret tunnels so the media can't catch him. Well, what do you know? It worked. They went through a secret room just well enough that the media cannot catch him, and he drives away. I thought that was fantastic. The media is running. It's like, let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's try and get him. It's like trying to, you know what it's like? You know what that's like with the media? It's like those guys. They're trying to chase those females that you love. You're trying to chase them, and then you're so heartbroken that they run away 2 minutes later. You're like, you tartar sauce, darn it, and you don't catch them. That's what it's like with the whole Dennis Rodman media thing, which I found very funny. But speaking of the media, I must say about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, remember when we were all skeptical of Michael Jordan in the media? And say, oh, he would have never survived, he would have done this, he would have done that. And I personally thought I still thought he maybe would have had some problems had he played in today's NBA. But in the last 2 episodes against Indiana and Utah, it stood out to me. He's like, okay, he's not being ahead of himself. He's not being fully garbage about it. He's humbled. He's humbling himself. He's basically being polite. He's saying the right things to the media. And Chicago's one of the larger outlets in the entire universe. So he did it all with, he did it with grace. He did it with class. He did it with a lot of things. And that's because he learned from the whole media thing that, okay, I need to represent myself in a different way. Which he did a good job of in the last 2 episodes. With the way how he portrayed the media. And then I thought it was a very good documentary altogether. But then another thing that stood out to me is we treat Michael Jordan as if he's like, you know, Zeus, the thunder gods of all that. No. Michael Jordan was human, and he had all his mistakes. I thought he was hitting that shot in Game 4. He misses, but even the best of them miss. And y'all would have gone to LeBron James had he missed that shot. But sure, let's say, oh, okay, it's Michael Jordan, no big deal, he misses a shot. And you wouldn't have gone on Kobe Bean Bryant either. You would have definitely gone on LeBron for that. And another thing you would have gotten on LeBron for was Game 5 against the Utah Jazz. When basically the only shot Jordan had was that half quarter. And I said to my dad, what kind of shot is this by MJ? And he's like, to me, that's the only shot. I said, okay, I guess that's the only shot. But could you imagine had that been LeBron and be like, oh, what is he doing? The whole 9 yards. Please. Enough with the ruckus already. That's all I have to say on the matter. Just basically for the sole reason that Michael Jordan was human. And we're acting like Michael Jordan was this old perfection guy, which he really wasn't. And which just completely disgusts me when it comes to this GOAT talk. And I kind of don't appreciate it because we're treating him like, as I just said, Zeus, which he's certainly not. I just decided to use that terminology because that's, I guess, the most goddess, godlike, or whatever, like people love using sometimes when it comes, I guess, to Greek mythology. Yes, I remember learning Greek mythology in 12th grade. Yes, I remember learning Greek mythology in 12th grade in high school. Gee, that was absolutely a fun class for me and the rest of my classmates. But that's another story for another time, and I'm not going to get into that right now. So back onto the basketball side of things. Is that if you ask me throughout this series who the greatest of all time is, as I've been saying the last 5 weeks, I'm not changing my stance. Bill Russell's number 1, and Wilt Chamberlain's number 2. Michael Jordan's top 5, top 6, and I have Kobe Bean Bryant at 7, like LeBron James at number 8. And another interesting thing that stood out to me, and I was very interested to see, and what Michael Jordan meant in this quote when he was asked this by the media, I ain't Shaq. That was very interesting. I don't know what the context was of that question, but I guess Jordan wasn't this big man that Shaq was, and I'm not sure the right word to use here for this, but basically saying that Shaq was a monster down low, and Jordan was basically this mid-range stud defensive player, one of the greatest to ever do it. I mean, it's 2 different positions. And maybe Michael Jordan didn't want to compare himself to Shaq, which is okay. Which I don't think a lot of these players want to do. So, yeah, and then some of the other things I took from this is that Scottie Pippen missed those free throws in Game 3 and 4 against Indiana. The team was broken off after 1998, 6 championships, sorry. And then, I don't think we should be double biased anymore between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. To me, as I've said, it's like the Democrats and the Republicans nonetheless. I would like to also see, now that this documentary is over, I would like to see a Kobe Bean Bryant documentary or a LeBron James documentary, and maybe some other professional basketball players as well. Also, what I would like to see is just to see more of this. I wonder what would happen if they put a movie into this, but I guess the documentary is good enough. It felt like you were in a whole sports scene for the last, 5 weeks, 5 Sunday nights? And boy, it was a fun one to watch. Because I'm just going to say this, that I thought The Last Dance was a great thing. I'm so happy ESPN pushed it up. And I'm sure a lot of people were too. I'm just wondering what the ratings actually were for The Last Dance. Because you had all these guys like Mark Jackson and Jalen Rose and Isaiah Thomas. And then you also had Kobe Bean Bryant featured, and there's some other players too. Dennis Rodman, James Paxton, Tony Kukoc. And Kukoc I thought was phenomenal. And I thought he was one of those international players that's like, oh, he's really good. He could shoot. He's got a mid-ranger like Dirk Nowitzki has with the Dallas Mavericks. Moving on to the next thing. I can't believe I actually forgot about this to post this on my Facebook and Instagram. Facebook and Twitter, and shared it on my Instagram and Snapchat. But this is the next agenda I want to get into, and I kind of forgot about this until I looked at the script after I printed it. So Aaron Rodgers speaks out for the first time to the media ever since they drafted Jordan Love out of Utah State with the 26th overall pick. So, as I'm not surprised by Aaron Rodgers' reaction, is that he wasn't thrilled with the selection. I mean, why would he? You're one of the greatest quarterbacks who's ever played this game. You don't draft him a wide receiver. You draft offensive linemen and running backs. You want to be a pound and ground team. And you're basically trying to put the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands, which I 100% disagree with on Matt LaFleur's part. I don't understand the reasoning why this would be. Aaron Rodgers, yeah, he's 36, 37 years old. But the truth, yeah, he's 36, 37 years old. But the truth of the matter is let's not pretend that Rodgers isn't going to be there for at least another 2 years. Because if we truly believe that Rodgers is done there after next year, that's completely idiotic, unless he gets hurt. That's the only thing I can think of, and that's be the reason why he leaves. Alright? Obviously, he wasn't happy with the decision But he understands why it happened, though, because he understands the future, because with Rodgers, and then this happened with Brett Favre. And the thing about Rodgers is that he doesn't feel like it's his responsibility to develop Love. He cares more about winning football games and leading them to another Super Bowl, which they haven't done since 2010 regular season, 2011 postseason in Super Bowl 45 against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Dallas, Texas, by a score of 34-28. And Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks who ever played. And if you actually believe he's going to get traded after this year, you're crazy. I said it's going to be 2 years. That's what I truly believe it's going to be with Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love's not ready to play yet. And if you actually believe that Jordan Love's ready to play right now, you're insane. Jordan Love is very raw. He has to work on his mechanics. He has to work on his decision making. And he also has to learn the playbook. I don't know what kind of learner he is, but we got to see how fast he absorbs the playbook and the responsibilities as potentially the next franchise quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And Green Bay usually hits on these quarterbacks. Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers, and now they hope it's Jordan Love. And Aaron Rodgers has been the heartbeat and heart and soul of the Green Bay Packers for the last decade, and it would be a shame for him to be gone after next year. But this is going to be a potentially dramatic situation. If Rodgers does not play well, if they get off to a slow start, what kind of media buzz is going to happen with Jordan Love? And I think it's preposterous and ridiculous that potentially in a week 7, week 8 affair, if Green Bay's 2-4, 2-5, or 3-4 in a slow start, that we're going to be talking about should Aaron Rodgers be benched, which is absolutely disgraceful on all ends of the spectrum. And you know it's true, Packers fans, and you know it's true to the rest of the NFL media. Because it's absolutely ridiculous if we're going to sit here and talk about Aaron Rodgers being replaced. Because he's not getting replaced this year unless he gets hurt. And Jordan Love becomes like what? When Drew Bledsoe got hurt for the New England Patriots and then Tom Brady had to step in? Yeah, right. That's not happening this year for the Green Bay Packers, ladies and gentlemen. All right? Excuse me. So that was the last of that when it comes to the Aaron Rodgers press conference and the whole Jordan Love thing. And I'm curious to see what Fox Sports 1 Colin Cowherd has to say on that later about the situation and some of the other media members as well, because I will be very intrigued by that. On to the next order of business here. Drum roll, please. Sooner rather than later, we might be seeing the NHL coming back to fruition. So, ladies and gentlemen, potentially we may be starting your engines sooner rather than later, because today at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, the NHL Board of Governors will be meeting to potentially, I don't know if this is going to finalize a potential 2014 playoff format, but the NHLPA and the NHL were basically having a lot of talks over the weekend about coming back to play. And I'm real curious to see what's going to happen in this meeting today. So, Darren Dreger posted on his Twitter, NHL board conference call today. The NHLPA was also busy this weekend working on return to play scenarios. 2 up cities with 12 teams in each has been discussed, and remains one of those possibilities TBD to be decided, and each day he's referring to each conference. And then Bob McKenzie, TSN, nothing firmed up yet, obviously, but 2 up cities instead of 4 is generating some buzz in discussions amongst teams. Las Vegas, for example, where an entire hotel resort could be dedicated to the NHL and with easy access to the arena. By the way, there are still multiple cities in the mix to be NHL hubs, and the number of hubs is still probably to be decided. So, what do I think? I'm curious to see how it's all going to wind up. And then, with this 2014 playoff format, personally, I don't like the playoff format. First of all, why are we adding teams when some of these teams don't even deserve to be in the playoffs? That's number one. Why are we adding 8 extra teams that don't deserve there to begin with? You worked hard enough. It's play stopped when you're in the month of March. We are not talking about November or December. Play stopped March 12th. And we are going to sit here on May 18th and say 8 extra teams deserve it. Because those 8 teams lost out. And no, they don't deserve it. Why do we want to throw these scenarios out there that we want to put an asterisk to a potential Stanley Cup team that didn't even deserve to make the playoffs? But I'm going to say this right now. If we do go this route for 24 teams, I have a list of teams that Gary Bettman better pray and hope win the whole thing. And these are my tier 1 teams. Mr. Gary Bettman, if you want to go with this money grabber, and if you want to do this, fine. But you better pray one of these 6 teams wins. Here they are. Team number 1 is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Team number 2 is the Washington Capitals. Team number 3 is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Team number 4 is the Boston Bruins. Team number 5 is the Colorado Avalanche. And team number 6 is the St. Louis Blues. So to me, those 6 teams, I think, are your serious Stanley Cup contenders. And now here are the next 6 teams where, like, if play did not get paused, maybe they would have a chance. But this team could maybe have an asterisk by it, but it won't seem as bad. Those 6 teams are the Dallas Stars, the Edmonton Oilers, the Calgary Flames, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Winnipeg Jets. Now, here are the 4 teams that I felt didn't have a shot to begin with in the 16-team playoff format. The Columbus Blue Jackets, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Nashville Predators, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yep. So, those would be my 16 teams where play paused, and that's basically it. So, how are we going to decide this 2014 playoff format? There are a couple ways. Way number 1 is that they choose the top 6 teams in each division. So, and way number 2 is we do the 12 best in each conference. So here are these teams that could be potentially added to the format in the East. The New York Islanders, the New York Rangers, the Buffalo Sabres, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Florida Panthers. Now here are the 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that are for sure out. The New Jersey Devils, the Ottawa Senators, and the Detroit Red Wings. Now the teams in the Western Conference that are for sure out is only the San Jose Sharks and the Los Angeles Kings. So the teams that could potentially be in from the Western Conference is, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Minnesota Wild, the Vancouver Canucks, the Arizona Coyotes, and the Anaheim Ducks. I just think this is finally so messed up on many levels. So how would the playoff matchups work in this situation nonetheless? So let's go by the top 6 teams in each division. So let me do that first. So the Washington Capitals and the Philadelphia Flyers on the bye in the Metro. 1-2. Number 6, the New York Islanders versus number 3, the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then number 5, the Columbus Blue Jackets against number 4, the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that would be a fun short series. I actually believe Columbus versus Carolina would actually be a fun series. That could go either way. I think Pittsburgh would beat the Islanders. Blue Jackets, Hurricanes, maybe the edge goes to Columbus because they're maybe a little bit more gritty. Maybe they're better coached than Carolina, but I don't know if it's by much. And the thing is, Columbus hasn't been healthy all year. And then for the Atlantic Division, on your buys is the Boston Bruins and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then you would have the Buffalo Sabres taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens and the Florida Panthers. You know what? Those series actually may be decent. I think Toronto beats Buffalo, but I could see Buffalo being in Toronto. And Montreal, Florida, I would take Florida just because I think they have better offensive personnel. I don't think Montreal has enough to score. And I think Sergei Bobrovsky finally got over his little playoff hump last year. And then in the Central Division, the Minnesota Wild would face the Dallas Stars. And the Nashville Predators would take on the Winnipeg Jets. And the Colorado Avalanche and the St. Louis Blues would have first round bye in the Central Division. In the Pacific Division, the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights would have a first round bye. And then the Anaheim Ducks would face the Calgary Flames. And the Arizona Coyotes would face the Vancouver Canucks. So let's see. I think Dallas would beat Minnesota. And I truly believe that Winnipeg beats Nashville. But that could be a very feisty and very close series. So, that's one way we look at it. And then I think Calgary would beat Anaheim. And I think Vancouver beats Arizona. So, that's for the division. Now, if we do based off a 12 and a 1 seed in each conference. So, the East, Washington, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, Boston. Would they do? I think they would probably just do. I don't know if they would do for 1, 2, or 3, and 4. I don't know if they would have the top division winners as 1, 2, or if they would do just like 1, 2, 3, 4, no matter what, depending on your points, no matter what. So if we're just gonna do it based on points here, it would be Boston 1, Tampa Bay 2, Washington 3, and Philadelphia 4. Yep, so Boston 1, Tampa Bay 2, Washington 3, Philadelphia 4. And then 12-5, Montreal, Pittsburgh. I'll take Pittsburgh. 11-6, Florida, Carolina. I'll take the Hurricanes. 10-7, New York Rangers, Toronto Maple Leafs. I will take the Rangers in that one in an upset. I personally think they may be better in some way, shape, and form than the Maple Leafs. New York, Toronto battle. I like it a lot. And then the New York Islanders and Columbus. I'm going to take Columbus here. I also think Columbus is a better hockey team. I also think Columbus is a better hockey team than the Islanders are. So in the Western Conference, you would have St. Louis 1, Colorado 2, Vegas 3, Edmonton 4. 12-5, Chicago, Dallas. I'll take the Stars. Chicago has no goaltending. They would basically get demolished. Arizona, Winnipeg. I'll take Winnipeg here. I don't think Arizona's a match for Winnipeg. Minnesota, Calgary. Give me Calgary. Vancouver, Nashville. I'll take Nashville nonetheless. That's what I feel like how the matchups would fold out. Now, what I didn't research this. I'm curious to see what would it look like had we gone 1 through 24 based off of the entire league. Now that would be interesting. I should have done that, but those are the ideas that the NHL's floating around. So I'm just sharing the NHL floating around ideas with you guys. And personally, could we see something by the end of today? The NHL maybe having a decision about hockey coming back? Boy, oh boy, it would be nice. And it would feel good to find out that hockey's coming back. And yes, I know I've had conversations with my Uncle Frank, and he's like to me, it's going to feel this, it's going to feel that. I don't even know if I feel like watching the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, I'm just sitting here like, I just need something. Listen, maybe I'm not going to warm up to the idea first, but maybe this is a time to marketize, and in unforeseen circumstances, marketize your star players. That's what I have to say. But when you decide this, then I personally think they're trying to do this so then they can make a decision on what to do with the draft. And then, once you make the decision what you want to do with this playoffs, either 16 or 24 teams, then you could have your draft lottery based off of 7 or 15. Personally, I just think it should be when play stopped. Because I was on the phone with someone the other day, some person who's not close to hockey. I'm like, what would you do? I gave him a couple scenarios. Like, I would just have the teams in the playoffs where play stopped. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I agree with. I personally agree with. I don't think that's hard at all. So moving on to my next segment, Major League Baseball. And I'm not going to be talking about the proposed plan today for baseball because I'm not sure how that's going to roll out anytime soon. I don't know how close that is to returning. It should be July, but it seems like the players and the owners are discombobulated for right now. And it seems like the NHL is maybe the closest to returning out of the MLB and the NBA. But in the meantime, as I did with NHL Russia, Canada, United States, for example, and the NBA last week with Duke, Kentucky, Texas, Florida, UCLA, and all the other schools, that here we go. I decided to research all MLB divisional teams. So I just did this for fun. All I did was a starting lineup. You have a catcher, a first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, third baseman, 3 outfielders, a DH, because you're going to have a universal DH, 5 starting pitchers, and a closer. So here we go. The National League East. Starting catcher, JT Realmuto for the Philadelphia Phillies. First baseman for the National League East, Freddie Freeman, the Atlanta Braves. Second baseman, Ozzie Baez, Atlanta Braves. Shortstop, Trey Turner, Washington Nationals. Third baseman, Jeff McNeil, New York Mets. Outfielder, Juan Soto, Washington Nationals. Outfielder, Ronald Acuna Jr., Atlanta Braves. Outfielder, Bryce Harper of the Philadelphia Phillies. And designated hitter, Pete Alonso, the New York Mets. Starting pitching, and this may be the best rotation out of all the divisions. Jacob deGrom of the New York Mets, Steven Strasburg of the Washington Nationals, Max Scherzer of the Washington Nationals, Aaron Nola of the Philadelphia Phillies, and Mike Soroka of the Atlanta Braves. So now let's break this down here by each team. Philadelphia has 1, 2, and then 3 players. So Philadelphia has 3 on the roster. Oh, and your closer is Sean Doolittle. So Washington has Trey Turner, Juan Soto, Scherzer, Strasburg, and Doolittle. So Washington's got 5. And they're the defending World Series champions. So they're the ones that have the most in the division, which I find very interesting about the Nationals. And at this Nationals team, they lost Rendon, but they have Juan Soto back, who is the heartbeat and heart and soul of this Nationals team. And Juan Soto is going to be carrying this team if we have a baseball season. Next up, the New York Mets. They have 1, 2, 3 with Alonso, McNeil, and DeGrom. And the Atlanta Braves with 1, 2, 3, and 4 with Soroka, Baez, Acuna Jr., and Freeman. So that's a nice National League East team. Moving on, the National League Central. Catcher, Wilson Contreras to the Chicago Cubs. First baseman, Anthony Rizzo to the Chicago Cubs. Second baseman, Keston Hiura of the Milwaukee Brewers. Shortstop, Javier Baez of the Chicago Cubs. Third baseman, Eugenio Suarez of the Cincinnati Reds. Outfielder, Christian Yelich of the Milwaukee Brewers. Outfielder, Nick Castellanos of the Cincinnati Reds. And Kyle Schwarber of the Chicago Cubs. Designated hitter, Paul Goldschmidt of the St. Louis Cardinals. Starting pitcher, Jack Flaherty of the St. Louis Cardinals. Miles Mikolas of the St. Louis Cardinals. Brandon Woodruff of the Milwaukee Brewers. Trevor Bauer of the Cincinnati Reds. And Luis Castillo of the Cincinnati Reds. Andrew Miller is your closer for St. Louis. So St. Louis, Mikolas, Miller, Flaherty, and Goldschmidt. That's 4. And then, because they won the division last year, and they actually happened to get to the National League Championship Series but lost, Chicago Cubs, Contreras, Rizzo, Baez, and Kyle Schwarber. Yeah, that team, the Chicago Cubs are basically an offensive juggernaut. I looked up the numbers last year. I'm like, Kyle Schwarber was in the high 30s for home runs. It's 38, 39. I'm like, Kyle Schwarber. And my dad's like to me, you don't have him at DH? I'm like, no, because Schwarber's an outfielder, and you got these Rizzo and Goldschmidt who both play first base, and I need one of them as a designated hitter. So Goldschmidt's a designated hitter. And I'm sure there are probably some Pittsburgh Pirate fans out there right now that are probably screaming or yelling at me at the top of their lungs that I don't have Josh Bell on this list. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo, cry me a river. Cry me a river that I don't have Josh Bell on this list. God, give me a break. Okay? That's all I got to say on the matter. Next up for the Brewers, I have Hiura, that's 1. I have Christian Yelich, that's 2. And Brandon Woodruff, that's 3. So Yelich, the heartbeat and heart and soul of the Milwaukee Brewers, who happens to be a National League MVP candidate year after year, is one of the best players in baseball. And could you imagine had Yelich and Giancarlo Stanton and Marcell Ozuna and some of those other guys played and stayed with the Miami Marlins? Because that team was turning the corner until all those guys got traded. And I don't care what anyone says to me. And I know we had the tragic death of Jose Fernandez a couple years ago with the boat accident, but that team was turning its corner. Cincinnati Reds, Eugenio Suarez, that's 1. Nick Castellanos, that's 2. Trevor Bauer, that's 3. And Luis Castillo, that's 4. So the Reds, that's a team that's turning the corner. The Cincinnati Reds are a team that's turning the corner. And they could make the playoffs this year. And I think they will, as long as we have a baseball season. And I think in a 5 or 17 format, they will be in the playoffs. Next up, the National League West. Catcher Buster Posey of the San Francisco Giants. First baseman Max Muncy of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Second baseman Ryan McMahon of the Colorado Rockies. Shortstop Manny Machado of the San Diego Padres. Nolan Arenado, third baseman of the Colorado Rockies. Outfielder Cody Bellinger of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Outfielder Charlie Blackmon of the Colorado Rockies. And outfielder Ketel Marte of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And your designated hitter, Will Myers of the San Diego Padres. Your starting pitchers are Clayton Kershaw of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Walker Buehler of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Madison Bumgarner of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Chris Paddock of the San Diego Padres. and John Gray to Colorado Rockies. And I know there are probably some Mets fans right now that are about to full blast me for having Chris Paddack and the Padres on this list. Because I know how much Mets fans do not appreciate Chris Paddack with the whole situation with Pete Alonso. And that's why they're coming after Paddack. But I don't think the NL West pitching's that strong. And Paddack, I believe, is actually one of the better pitchers in the National League West. So, and they got Walker Buehler, I think, is becoming the ace for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw, how many more years does he have left? I mean, it seems like that the Los Angeles Dodgers World Series clock is basically ticking. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Yes, indeed. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock on it. So here we go. Los Angeles Dodgers, Muncy 1, Bellinger 2, Kershaw 3, Walker Buehler 4. Oh, and your closer's Kelly Jansen 5 for the Dodgers. San Diego Padres, you have Chris Paddack 1, Manny Machado 2, Will Myers 3. Colorado Rockies, Nolan Arenado 1, Ryan McMahon 2, Charlie Blackmon 3, and John Gray 4. Colorado has 4 guys on this list because Colorado, just like the Chicago Cubs, yeah, they weren't that great of a baseball team last year, but they got guys that could hit the ball, that could basically smack the you-know-what out of it, which I was basically doing in my backyard yesterday, off a tee and into a net, which I actually like happening to do a lot, because my brother bought it, we put it up, and I actually like using it every now and then. I was actually wearing my Michael Conforto shirt yesterday. My mom said to me once, Conforto, get out of the way. And I'm like, don't call me Conforto. I'm like, use my name, Glenn. I was just joking around with her. So back to, yes, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Ketel Marte 1, and Madison Bumgarner 2. And that's a better team, but they don't have, I guess, those kind of players. And then Buster Posey for San Francisco, and that's it. So as of right now, the teams that don't have all-stars is the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Miami Marlins. Next up, the American League East. All right. Catcher Gary Sanchez of the New York Yankees. First baseman Mitch Moreland of the Boston Red Sox. Second baseman DJ LeMahieu of the New York Yankees. Shortstop Gleyber Torres of the New York Yankees. Third baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Toronto Blue Jays. Outfielder Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. Outfielder Giancarlo Stanton of the New York Yankees. And outfielder Andrew Benintendi of the Boston Red Sox. Designated hitter J.D. Martinez of the Boston Red Sox. Starting pitchers, Garrett Cole of the New York Yankees, Blake Snell of the Tampa Bay Rays, Tyler Glasnow of the Tampa Bay Rays, Chris Sale of the Boston Red Sox, and Hinyu Ryu of the Toronto Blue Jays, and your closers are Aldis Chapman. Let's start with Boston. Mitch Moreland, Andrew Benintendi, J.D. Martinez, and Chris Sale. So Boston basically took a step back last year, despite winning the World Series the year before. Excuse me. Boston hopes to get back to the playoffs this year, but time's going to tell whether or not they do get back to the playoffs. And this is another franchise that is a good, well-run organization, but the problem is right now they don't have, they're not a very deep farm system. They're just not very deep. General manager Chaim Bloom is going to have to basically fix it up. And we will see in the long run what happens and how it's decided. New York Yankees, Gary Sanchez, DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Garrett Cole, and Aroldis Chapman. So that's 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they got 8 guys. So Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is the heartbeat and heart and soul of the New York Yankees, and he's still recovering from his rehab right now. And very good hitter. So is Giancarlo Stanton. And one of my favorite guys on the roster is Gleyber Torres. I love watching Gleyber Torres play. I mean, Gleyber Torres, yes, I'm not a huge Yankees guy, and I've spoken how I felt about that fan base. But those players don't bother me. Like, I like Gleyber Torres, and I like Aaron Judge, and I like Giancarlo Stanton. And Torres is my favorite one. I actually happen to buy my brother, who's a Yankees fan, Jake. I bought him, like, an Aaron Judge and a Gleyber Torres and all those shirts. And Gary Sanchez. I'm probably not going to get him any more than that. Maybe a Stanton, we'll see. But on the note, the Yankees got like 8 guys, and they should be one of the World Series favorites, if not the favorites. Because I chose the Dodgers. Yankees got more stars than the Dodgers do, but it just seems like the Dodgers got not as many known players. And I remember saying last year, I think it was to Tyler Ferencik, who's a Yankees fan, big Yankees fan, and I mentioned to him, I think I mentioned to him on this show that the Los Angeles Dodgers were a better version of the Milwaukee Brewers because of the Bellinger and Yelich MVP comparisons, and then I thought the Dodgers just had a better system in place than the Brewers did. That's just what I felt, and probably just a better starting rotation than the Brewers did as well. Tampa Bay, they just have Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow. They don't really have the bats. That team's just based off a bunch of analytics, and it somehow got them to second wild card last year in the American League, and they happened to push the Astros to 5 games, but they lost a Game 5 on the road in Houston. All the home teams won in that series. And then the Toronto Blue Jays, just Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Hinyu Ryu of Toronto. That team's starting to turn the corner. Maybe they'll surprise some people this year. And now the Baltimore Orioles are now the 3rd team on this list that don't have at least 1 star. AL Central. Catcher, Salvador Perez of the Kansas City Royals. First baseman, Carlos Santana of the Cleveland Indians. Second baseman, Whit Merrifield of the Kansas City Royals. Shortstop, Francisco Lindor of the Cleveland Indians. Third baseman, Josh Donaldson of the Minnesota Twins. Outfielder, Max Kepler of the Minnesota Twins. Outfielder, Eloy Jimenez of the Chicago White Sox. And outfielder, Eddie Rosario of the Minnesota Twins. Your designated hitter, Nelson Cruz of the Minnesota Twins. Starting pitchers, Shane Bieber of the Cleveland Indians. Mike Clevinger of the Cleveland Indians. Jose Barreros of the Minnesota Twins. Matthew Boyd of the Detroit Tigers. And Lucas Giotto of the Chicago White Sox. And your closer, Sergio Romo of the Minnesota Twins. So the Twins basically broke out last year. Let's see, the Twins have how many? Let's see, Donaldson 1, Kepler 2, Rosario 3, Cruz 4, Barreros 5, and Romo 6. So that's a very good Twin squad. Next up, Cleveland Indians, Santana 1, Lindor 2, Bieber 3, and Clevinger 4. So the Indians, they have a deep rotation, but the problem with them is they can't hit. If the Indians can hit the ball, maybe they go back to the playoffs this year. That's if we have a 2020 season. And then, Chicago White Sox, they have 2, Jimenez and Giotto. And then, Detroit just has the 1 in Boyd. And then, last but not least, the Royals have 2, Salvador Perez and Whit Merrifield. And now, drum roll please for the last division in the American League West. And by far, I'm going to tell you this. The American League West was by far the toughest one to choose from. Catcher, Tom Murphy of the Seattle Mariners. First baseman, Yuli Gurriel of the Houston Astros. Second baseman, Jose Altuve of the Houston Astros. Shortstop, Marcus Semien, Oakland Athletics. Third baseman, Anthony Rendon of the Los Angeles Angels. outfielder Mike Trout of the Los Angeles Angels, outfielder Joey Gallo of the Texas Rangers, and outfielder George Springer of the Houston Astros, designated hitter Chris Davis of the Oakland Athletics, starting pitchers Justin Verlander of the Houston Astros, Zach Greinke of the Houston Astros, Corey Kluber of the Texas Rangers, Julio Teheran of the Los Angeles Angels, and Frankie Montas of the Oakland Athletics, and your closer is Liam Hendriks of the Oakland Athletics. So let's start with Seattle. They just had the one in Tom Murphy. Texas, they have two, Joey Gallo and Corey Kluber, Texas. So Kluber was traded from Cleveland to Texas. And Joey Gallo, the heartbeat and the heart and soul of the Texas Rangers front of that team. Joey Gallo's a beast. And Texas seems to be turning the corner too. Yes, they haven't been in the World Series since 2011, 2012. Sorry, 2010, 2011. But the Texas Rangers, that's a tough division. They'll probably finish in fourth. Because you have the Houston Astros, the Oakland Athletics, and the Los Angeles Angels. But could we see an instance where Texas gets in? Maybe. Because they're starting pitching improved, and you also have Cole Hamels there. Oh, and they also got Ruffin Odor and Elvis Andrus. The Texas Rangers have a decent team, but the problem with that team is they got no farm system either. That's all you got here with Joey Gallo and Corey Kluber. Next up, Houston Astros, Yuli Gurriel, Jose Altuve, Justin Verlander, George Springer, Zach Greinke. I did originally have 7 for the Astros. I was going to have an entire infield with Correa and Bregman until I looked up the numbers. And you'll see who the third baseman is in a minute and why he actually had a better year. And I already announced the shortstop. Oh, yeah, I did announce the third baseman, Anthony Rendon. What am I saying? Who actually had an MVP caliber year with the Washington Nationals. What am I thinking waiting for a minute? And then shortstop Marcus Semien for the A's actually had statistically better numbers than Carlos Correa did too. And now everyone's going to say with the Astros, oh, they're cheaters. Oh, they're this. Stop it. Stop it. Yeah, we discussed it already. That's all long gone in the past. I think the coronavirus basically overshadowed everything. Will these teams actually remember to peg some of these guys when games go on? Time's going to tell nonetheless. Next up, the Angels. They have 3 players, Rendon, Trout, Teheran. Last but not least, the Oakland Athletics. They got 1 Semien, 2 Chris Davis, 3 Montañez, and 4 Hendriks. So, if you ask me, and I actually love this list. I very much love the list for all of these teams. So, what do we learn here? That the Orioles, the Baltimore Orioles, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Miami Marlins do not have anybody. If you cannot have one guy on these teams, it just shows how far behind that your franchise is. At least one guy! And those 3 teams didn't have one that made any of these lists. All the other teams did. And there were some choices I had to make along the way. Yes, I know there are probably some stubs, and I know you're probably not happy with some of them. But these are how these teams work. It's like picking an NBA All-Pro team, or an NBA this, or an NBA that, all the whole 9 yards. That's how it works. I'm sorry. That's just how it works. I very much liked the way how this came out, and I thought I was being very creative. And I'm sure probably sometime within the next week or so, I'm going to maybe have something NFL related to colleges, like who went to LSU, who went to Ohio State, who went to Miami, who went to Texas, who went to Oklahoma. That's going to be something. That's probably going to be a very interestingly long list. Because first of all, you got 53 guys on the field. You got 32 teams. That's going to be really hard to decide. Maybe I'm just going to go more like, okay, let's choose more of noticeable players rather than just listing down a bunch of names for basically for the heck of it. That's what I wanted to say. Basically, I shouldn't be doing it just for the heck of it, just to write down any random name. That I should be actually be doing it because I want to and I love to do it, and also for the sole reason of that I want to share with you guys, and it's got to be noticeable. And like, I don't want to release the random name like, who the heck is that? And it'll be like, oh, so this guy went to this place. Like, you know, for example, like Julio Jones and Amari Cooper and Josh Jacobs and basically Mark Ingram, Alabama, or Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Greedy Williams, LSU, or Eli Apple, Michael Thomas, Dwayne Haskins, Ohio State. Okay, we get it. That's what I'm basically going to do. So speaking of NFL, so DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar basically they got in trouble with the law. They were released on bail. Baker $200,000, Dunbar $100,000. Baker was a first-round pick in 2019 for the Giants. They traded up to get him, and the Giants are like, nah. They're like, stay home, worry about your legal troubles. And I'm curious to see what Seattle does with Dunbar, because Dunbar was with the Washington Redskins last year. And what's funny is, you know the old thing, freezing cold takes? There was an article listed a few hours before about an arrest warrant for the two of them, that Dunbar, it feels like something to the extent of Dunbar feels appreciated with Seattle, and this and that, the whole 9 yards, and then this happens. So, with the whole details, it's very tricky, and I usually don't like to talk about these kind of very touchy subjects. But all I gotta say is, I'm curious to see what the Giants do with DeAndre Baker, and I'm curious to see what the Seattle Seahawks do with Quinton Dunbar, and that's all I have here for now. Nonetheless, will they get released? How will they be punished by the law? I'm just very curious to see what is going to happen to them, both of them, nonetheless. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to Glenn's Dynamic Sports Corner. I am your host, Glenn Kaplan. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. I will be back here at the same time on Thursday. I'll be back here at the same time on Thursday. We will go over more NBA and NHL topics. Maybe potentially the NHL will have a decision by then about its resume to play. More 2020 NFL draft and schedule. Maybe some other potential NFL topics as well. 2020 NFL regular season. Along with maybe some MLB opening day. Nonetheless, merchandise we'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, I love you all. Be safe. And be well, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks. I truly appreciate it. Hope to be back here on Thursday. Love you all. Take care. Be safe and be well. Ladies and gentlemen,